We are joined by Dr. John Fortier. He's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. Firstly, I want to get your take on President's notable silence in regards to China. Is this a tactical pause ahead of a possible deal, or sort of a broader shift in how Trump plans to handle China going forward?
Well, I think there are two things. This was a very long speech, but the president's major focus is still domestic. So most of the speech was about domestic matters. But also we're busy in foreign policy in other areas, and there were other things to talk about as well. But I think you're right at the end of the day. There is also a sense that President Trump has had a hard line on China, but has also opened the door for the possibility that he will be the one who can cut a deal with a tough adversary. And with this meeting coming up, I think that is some indication that he still wants to hold that door open so he can go in with some strength, but also hopefully come out from his perspective with a good outcome for America.
Dr. Fortier, help me connect the dots now, and maybe they don't connect at all. Many Asian countries are close to China, others maybe not so much, but here's what we know. Everyone is trying to minimize the impact of tariffs and stay in Trump's good books. And we know that President Trump has used tariffs as a foreign policy tool. He's done this quite a number of times. So when he says to Congress, I don't need you to codify tariffs, I'm wondering what that means for Asian governments, this region's exporters, and also for foreign policy here, towards the United States, I suppose.
Well, I think some of the speech was really to explain himself to the American people, especially with our very recent Supreme Court decision, which made one of the ways in which he's been putting tariffs on not a possible avenue. What he did emphasize with the court in front of him at that speech was that he does have some other tools, and some of them he has used that are temporary, that he's used immediately. There won't be a gap. And there are some others that he may use for tariffs in the longer run. He put it this way, that it takes a little more work. I'm not sure that it's going to be exactly the same, but the president will likely have substantial tariffs. And his other point was that many countries have already gone through this negotiation with us, and in some ways reopening the negotiation with more uncertainty might not be in their interest as well. So he was making an argument really to the American people why he's doing this, but also a bit to the world that he still has some powers, and that the status quo and what he's done is probably what's going to last.
Oh, we know that Japan's prime minister is set to visit Washington in March. Doctor, in light of the speech, how could that shape President Trump's talks with Ms. Takaichi, especially as Tokyo's relationship with Beijing remains strained?
Well, again, I do think that the president has had a good relationship in the very early days with the Japanese prime minister, new prime minister, and I do think he will want to emphasize American and Japanese friendship. The alliance is at a very strong point. But again, the big point on China is that he both is going to be seen as having a hard line, but to go into those negotiations with the possibility that he might find a deal. The two sides, the two largest economies in the world, who are adversaries in many ways, still may find some sort of deal. And I think he can be friends with Japan and still go in with that prospect that he'll be tough, but ultimately seek a deal that will be good for America, but may also be good for wider Asia.
The U.S. has announced new sanctions on individuals and companies in Iran. But President Trump did not make a comprehensive case for military action against Iran in his speech yesterday. I'm wondering how come. Is it, his base whom he's promised no more forever wars, or is it really that he hasn't quite decided what he wants to do?
Yeah, I think you're right that his general stance when he came into office the first time was to be expressed that he would focus on American interests, but he wasn't going to get into foreign entanglements, as he thought both his predecessor, George W. Bush, did, and also that Barack Obama hadn't acted as forcefully as he should. So I think the president is trying to balance some things on Iran. What he has, though, is the credible possibility of a threat, and I think he's using that to see if there is any possibility of some negotiations that will be short of using force. If we do use force, I guess I do believe that he'll still be trying to avoid a larger entanglement. Of course, it's always difficult to know what the secondary consequences of any sort of military action are, but his idea is not to go in a long-term way, but longer term than his earlier bombing, and that threat is on the table with the hopes that maybe Iran will come to the table on some of these issues.
And Dr. President spoke about Ukraine in broad terms during the address, and he held a phone call with President Zelensky. What does it signal about the direction of U.S. support? And did the speech provide any clear sense of strategy?
Well, again, it's a similar position. I think the president is using this speech in a way after a year in office to say, look, remember what it was like under Joe Biden. And I think he clearly puts the blame on the Ukraine war, Russia invading Ukraine, on the Biden administration. But he has said also that he will try to resolve this war. And that has proved much more difficult than he anticipated. And frankly, Russia is not coming to the table as much or as quickly as the president may have thought that they would. So he's in the same position. It's something of a stalemate. He's certainly not looking for the kind of long-term, year after year financial commitment that the American people had been making before. On the other hand, I think there is still some support and some recognition that Russia is being stubborn at coming to a resolution, and that we are at a bit of a stalemate. So the president is seeking peace, but he hasn't been able to reach that objective that he's been having since day one.
Dr. Fortier, let's go a bit domestic now. I don't know if there are polling numbers about his speech. We do clearly know that Republicans and his base, loved his speech. The Democrats didn't think highly of it. But I'm wondering if you think he managed to reach out to independents, Latinos, and blacks who perhaps, have increased in terms of the level of disapproval for the president.
Well, as much as we build up the State of the Union, I don't think any State of the Union could really have that effect. I think there are a lot of things in the economy and broadly in the political system that are going to determine the election, which is still 7 months away, or 9 months away. But ultimately, this was a chance for the president to sort of reframe what his agenda is, to remind people what was before the Biden administration, to remind of all of the accomplishments. And that is a possibility of setting the agenda for what he wants to talk about leading into that midterm election. And ultimately, I think the performance of the economy is going to matter much more than this speech or any other speech that he gives. But these are some of the arguments that will be behind a Republican congressional races across the country, especially if the economy turns and they have the argument that things are going well. If things are not going well, again, it's going to be hard to say anything in a speech that will really go against the traditional midterm loss that presidents face.
Dr. Fortier, thank you very much. Appreciate you talking to us this morning. That's John Fortier, who is Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute.